Rewind-A-Dynamite from the post-wrestling site. AEW, lighting up the fuse. Sit back and enjoy the bubbly as we hear from John and Wai Ting. Where we're going, we don't need roads. And if the buck stops here, this thing might blow. Everything you hear are opinions of the show. And if you don't like it, go to the forums and let them know.
And hello, it is John Pollock and Wai Ting with Rewind-A-Dynamite coming to you live tonight from the almost as hot as Clearwater, Florida location of Toronto, Ontario. You been out lately, Wai? It's pretty hot.
It's pretty hot. No, I wouldn't say like near what Clearwater seemed to be tonight. But yeah, it's still pretty hot out there.
I don't know. If I go out in my spandex this week, I'm going to have some water bottles to douse myself with.
Sure. Yeah, you wouldn't have an issue finding those. No.
Well, it's heating up on the post-wrestling cafe because July is in full swing, and that means it's time for the G1 season. Is everybody ready? New Japan did us no favors by waiting until this past Monday to finalize the field. So it is a race for people to make all of their predictions of all the matches. We're only giving you a week to do this. The deadline is Friday night at midnight, and we encourage everyone. It's free to join, postwrestling.com/G1. Do your best to join in the most entertaining contest of the year at Post Wrestling, the G1 contest, overseen by the Overlord, Chris Engler, who will be tabulating all of the results, and we will be keeping you apprised of the results throughout our many podcasts dedicated to the G1 over the next 6 weeks. And it all starts off this weekend in Hoffman Estates, Illinois. Wai, have you sat down? Have you created an algorithm? How many AI users are going to be contributing to this contest? Are Claude and ChatGPT banned from usage in this pick contest?
I mean, I don't think so. I don't know how much it would really help you, but yeah, you could try, But no, I haven't made my picks yet. I'm just gonna pick at random this year. I don't really, I feel like I'll do just as well.
I'm gonna meticulously book this entire tournament match by match, going backwards. That's what I'm gonna do. Yeah, I'm gonna dedicate 24 hours to my ballot.
Deadline is Friday, 11:59 p.m. Eastern. So just make sure you do that on Thursday, John.
We've got a preview up on this week's Post Pro Res from WH Park and Karen. That is free for everybody. And we're also going to make available this Sunday, the first night of the G1, with Karen Peterson and Bruce Lord going through the 9 matches that will take place Saturday night from Chicago. So that is all on the docket this coming weekend. We'll have a G1 show. I will be doing a UFC show with Eric Marcotte as well on Sunday. But before we get to the weekend, we've got the double shot, and we just dropped a 2-hour focus on the premiere of Dark Side of the Ring from Tuesday night, a 2-part, the first 2 parts of Jeff Jarrett and the battle for TNA.
Right. Yeah. This was set to be a TNA focused season or series unto itself, but this is, I think, our biggest in-depth discussion about just TNA's history that I think we've maybe had in ever, like on these particular podcasts. So it gives us a reason to do that, and I thought these 2 episodes were both very entertaining and also very enlightening and captivating. So the first half of this show will actually release for free tomorrow on our free feed. So those of you who are at least somewhat interested, you can in fact watch the entire first episode on the Vice YouTube channel or in the Dark Side of the Ring YouTube channel. So you can watch it and then maybe listen to our review all for free. And if you want to jump along and listen to the second half of the review talking about episode 2, sign up at postwrestlingcafe.com.
Yeah, a lot of focus, obviously, on the early days of TNA that Wai and I discussed, the relationship or lack thereof at times between Jeff and his father, Jerry, and, of course, a lot into the Jeff, Dixie Carter, Karen Jarrett dynamic that is a big focus of episode 2. And while Dixie is not part of this, it's not like they had a shortage of voices that had influence in TNA. Like in Dixie's absence, you do have Russo, Cornette, Scott D'Amore. You have Eric Bischoff toward the end of episode 2 as they get into the Hogan period as well as various talent, people that work behind the scenes. There's a lot to take from these first 2 hours, and we will tackle episode 3 next week, and we will have weekly reviews of this season of Dark Side of the Ring. So do check out all of that. It comes with your subscription at postwrestlingcafe.com. Sign up now, and that gets you in the door for your 30 days start as soon as you sign up, and that will take you into the G1 and 3 editions of Rewind-A-Way this month, continuing next week where we will tackle WrestleMania 21.
Yeah, and don't forget our Unreal episodes reviews also coming out on the Double Shot. Collision Course returns every single week. John and Eric will be talking about the Conor McGregor fight taking place this weekend as well. Okay.
We're shifting focus to Beach Break at the Bay Care Sound in Clearwater, Florida. Just seeing some pics of this place beforehand when they first booked this venue, I was looking forward to this show and just a totally different look and feel. I mean, it kind of had a bit of a resemblance to Daly's Place and the setup, but different in other ways. When Kenny and MJF brawled into the crowd way back, I don't know how enjoyable it would be to be in those seats where it didn't look like there were risers in this, but on television, I thought this looked fantastic.
I mean, they had screens, so
Why not?
That's probably the case, like at many places when you're watching. This was more of like a concert hall, and again, like very flat risers. It looks, but it made visually for like I think a really really interesting show, different from anything else on the calendar. And I'm sure at this point, like that kind of goes into maybe their decision to book certain venues. Certainly, you think about like the golf. The VR golf place as like one of the more memorable shows of the entire year. This I think is right up there, like especially for a show themed beach break, to actually have it take place outdoors with the sun still out completely makes that vibe feel that much more beachy. And certainly they had the heat on this one.
Yeah, we talk about all these places that they can run in Toronto. I mean, they could just go to like Canada's Wonderland or somewhere.
Do you know what? They've really opened the door. You could really like they could go to Christie Pitts and do a show there if they wanted to.
Perfect idea. Yeah. They also got obviously some kind of a kickback here because this show, we misidentified it as AEW Beach Break. It was really called AEW Beach Break, presented by Visit St. Pete, Clearwater, Florida.
Well, good for them.
Yeah, we got some beautiful scenic shots of the beaches, great restaurants in Clearwater. I think the human rights issues are more on the up and up in Clearwater than others.
As far as places that receive these, what do they call them? What does Mark Shapiro like to call these?
FIP.
FIPs, yes.
That's right. So we get into the show. Renee's backstage with Kenny Omega to start, and there is Kenny in a New Japan jacket alongside Michael Nakazawa to talk about his big match. And he says his back is against the wall, but I've done some of my best work with my back against the wall. And I'm not talking about AEW or even New Japan. I'm talking about Jersey All Pro, PWG, and DDT. And that's why the Bucks are not here. I've got Michael Nakazawa. He's got my back just like he has for the last 20 years, which was funny because this guy, he was nowhere to be found later on.
Yeah, was he the guy throwing the waters?
I don't think so. Nakazawa at any point during that main event.
He clearly did not have his back.
Omega came out by himself. We never saw Nakazawa after this promo. So.
I mean, the man with oils, like couldn't have shown up with a few bottles of water to douse Kenny.
Oh man, that should have been the finish. It would have been Max slipping off the top rope.
He gives him oil instead of water, and it cost him his career.
He chugs down baby oil. So. Michael Nakazawa, not the most loyal friend, it turned out. Maybe it just got too hot. He's like, I'm
this
out
was
here,
like
Kenny.
setting up some sort of like turn for Michael Nakazawa. Otherwise, what's the point of like mentioning him here?
I have no idea. This was very bizarre. Sure. He says that if I can't beat MJF, then I'll shake his hand. But he asks Max, do you have what it takes to kill me in that ring tonight and stop my title hopes and my hopes of headlining the biggest show in AEW history? which at this point it is not. And by August 30th, I still think it won't. It definitely won't, but we got to market it as such.
Potentially. I mean, it is in the biggest space that they've ever run, which is tied with the other 2 times that they've run the space. So, you got to talk it up like it'll be on
By
that
pure
level at least.
landmass, it qualifies.
Correct. Yeah.
We start with Tommaso Ciampa and Chris Jericho. And by the way, the set, very Bash at the Beach inspired. We've got the now famous lifeguard chair that one unfortunate performer had to spend an entire match seated in to watch. And that we had, all of our beach accessories at the front here.
It does feel like a spiritual successor to Bash at the Beach, and again, this one, especially taking place outside, felt that much more, in line with the theme than previous editions.
So Ciampa comes out first.
We should talk about, again, like for maybe our free listeners, the heat and humidity that was constantly brought up on this particular show. There was really, really high, both heat and humidity here in St. Pete, Clearwater. So I don't know how great of an advertisement it was for visiting.
Great place to visit, but come off season.
Yeah.
Come in October. It's a great time here. The temperature throughout was about 88 Fahrenheit, but that's just the temperature. Mm-hmm. And the amount of times that the broadcasters brought up the humidity, like you could imagine how hot they were, and watching these guys and women in the ring, in particular in the main event, that you just got the sense that like this was probably not the most enjoyable environment for these performers or these broadcasters that were out here for 2.5 hours.
Yeah, to be wrestling like the demanding style that like these guys had like sort of set the bar for in this heat. I mean, I'm sure the performers enjoyed it, enjoyed wrestling outdoors, but I suppose maybe they weren't necessarily banking on it being quite this hot for an outdoor show.
Yeah, it looked very, very heated in that sense. So Ciampa comes out first, and he hides by the entranceway for Jericho to come out, but Jericho outsmarts him by coming through the crowd, and he attacks Ciampa, which is, I don't think any babyface has ever figured this one out about the heel who's going to try and jump them from behind. So they fight by the entrance, and then Jericho suplexes Ciampa onto a beach chair. They were scanning the crowd several times. I'm pretty sure Jericho's son was in the crowd, wearing this old school WCW Jericho Monday Nitro shirt. I assume it was him. So they fight among the beach set as Judas continues here. So a little like Anarchy in the Arena feel at the beginning before Judas ended. Jericho hits a DVD onto the edge of the apron, and then they get onto the steps, and Ciampa hits him. It was more of a pedigree than a fairy tale ending, but that's what he delivered here to Jericho on the steps, busting open Jericho, who bled quite a bit, and he takes an air raid crash off the turnbuckle, and then there's a sand pail that Ciampa gets, full of sand, that Jericho stops with a code breaker, but in stopping it, this sand flies on top of Jericho and his bloody head, and it just, oh my God. I would rather take a hard way shot than take that amount of sand down my throat. Misses a lion salt, eats a pair of knees, and then it's Ciampa Jericho goes for the walls, but sand is thrown into his eyes and is struck for the win as Ciampa pins him in 13 minutes and 46 seconds.
Yeah. I thought these two, like, again, my feelings on the feud is that I had high expectations. I think they've delivered beneath that, starting with the Tommy's Mommy's promo that I feel kind of had to maybe make up for the. If you skip that week, feud.
You probably have a higher opinion of this program.
Perhaps
that was the real low point.
But they still never got to the level that I thought they'd be able to in terms of just storytelling and heat building with talents, both of them being this good, right? To me, it's a program that's really taken the edge off of Tommaso Ciampa just a little bit. He came in as like I think a much more darker toned heel. And coming out of this feud, you get a little less of that impression from him. But much of my feelings about the program will come down to the match, and I thought they had a very good match. Like I'm also keeping in mind the heat in all of this, but like considering all of that, both men did really well here, pulling out some special tricks. You had Jericho pulling out like a Death Valley driver on the apron, that fairy tale ending onto the steel steps. They were certainly trying to live up to, again, like a very high modern standard in AEW. Strong heel finish at the end that was like creatively set up with the pail and the sand in the mat. So I enjoyed all that. The right person won as well, of course.
But it's not over, because Ciampa nails him with a chair and then gets the dreaded power drill. And he's ready to use this power drill. I guess he was going to end Jericho here at Beach Break. And security runs in to prevent the power drill, which is this going to be his new weapon?
I guess it's his version of like, Ricochet scissors. Like everybody's got some sort of, I don't know, PG-13 rated horror movie weapon, and this one may be a bit tougher to pull off than like scissor stabbing, but I mean he's brought it up enough times that I do feel like we are working our way towards a power drill spot. At some point
Drill baby drill match.
Yeah.
They aired a vignette for the Brawling Birds inside of a bar, beating up a bunch of dudes.
Yeah. It's been a while since we've seen them like together as a team. This just seems to be another way to reheat them up for what you would assume to be a Wembley Stadium title challenge.
The APA of AEW.
I guess so, but they do it for free.
Yeah, they need to construct a better business plan.
Yeah, or they should get arrested.
I mean, I watched straight up assault for 30 seconds here.
Yeah,
we didn't know what premeditated. Like, how did they just come into this bar and start brawling? Did the men do something untoward?
Maybe that's what we need. We need some justification for these brawls. Like, why exactly are they just punching people? Yeah, I mean, they seem to just want to do it because they want to. But
that's criminal.
Yeah, I'm sure they have good reason. Yeah.
Okay. Renee interviews Will Ospreay in the back about the main event. He's pulling for Kenny. He wants that to be the main event of All In. So MJF comes in and calls him judgmental and points out how Will has never won this belt and mocks him for fighting for Jon Moxley's approval and says, "You were all about restoring the feeling. Well, I was the feeling all along. You and Kenny are just wrestlers. I'm a star, and I'm going to break your neck at Wembley." So Ospreay's retort is that MJF isn't even top 50 in the world. Oh, man. We're going PWI here on Will, and says, "There are 14-year-old girls that I know that are better than you." And says, "You're not part of the conversation, Max. You never will be." So Max spits at them.
He specifically says, "But because you resort to like cheating bullshit." That's what Ospreay seems to say disqualifies him from the conversation.
Is that the criteria?
I guess if depending on I don't know what he's reading. I don't know if does PWI recognize cheating victories?
I mean, we just watched your wife like set herself up for like 10 to 15, unless she has some good behavior. And they do the pull apart, and MJF declares that Omega is a dead man, and it's on Ospreay.
I thought this was a really strong segment, this face-to-face between the two, that I was not expecting maybe this level of tension being built between the two in like a parking lot interview segment. I, in particular, was really impressed with Ospreay's ability to here stand up to the bully, getting under his skin through words, targeting MJF's insecurities and doing it in a way that
goes back to the Moxley promo. They're just words.
Yeah, and yet like Ospreay is able to use it against MJF in ways that very few have against MJF. So it to me continues to show like how strong Will Ospreay is as a promo, but also how well he's scripted as a character. It really does feel like he is approaching lead character status right now within the company. It also, this little moment, I think, served as a strong misdirect for
I think that was the whole purpose of this.
People expecting Omega to win tonight. You even had like Ospreay really spell it out for you at the beginning of this promo saying, "I can't wait for Kenny Omega to win so that I can face Kenny Omega in the main event of All In." And conventional wisdom in wrestling would maybe lead you to think that, oh, they're making it so obvious. Maybe it's not happening. So all of this worked really well in at least like setting some of your expectations towards MJF winning tonight.
Bruv, you're the champion for the 50% off sale. Sale ends for Osprey Omega. I don't know what voice that was. That was far from Will Ospreay.
I'm curious when you come back from London.
I'm gonna. That's gonna be my goal.
Yeah, that's your project.
I don't know how the Londoners would take to me workshopping that one over there. I would probably be the Brawling Birds would be throwing me into the river. Konosuke Takeshita, Kyle Fletcher for the AEW International Championship. They mentioned how Takeshita is 2-0 against Fletcher, and Callis and Lance Archer are out with Fletcher. As you can expect, quite the match between these two. I increase everything on this show based on what conditions they were working under that I can't appreciate at home, but I can imagine that the fact that this was so solid under just viewing, I can imagine it was quite.
Does it boost the star rating? Like you can have maybe a 4.5-star match. Yeah. Is it 5 inside a sauna?
This is like having a great 25-minute fight at Elevation.
Ooh, yes, that's right.
So Fletcher early on goes after Takeshita's arm. He's focused on that quite a bit, and it would be, Takeshita's main weakness throughout the match. He goes to the edge of the apron, and he hits him with a bastard driver into a wheelbarrow on the edge of the apron. This was really quite something to watch him do on the edge so seamlessly.
It's impressive. Now, I do keep in mind that the apron sort of width in AEW rings seems to be longer, like for the purpose of them being able to do spots, but it's still very, very impressive. Yeah.
Takeshita hits the first of several poison ranas on this show. The power drive knee is caught with a Michinoku driver. When they talk about Takeshita and his famous thesis on the German suplex, Callis yells, "What kind of school allows you to write a thesis on a German suplex?"
I would actually love to know. When is this like incredibly discussed thesis going to get a translation to English?
I feel they have to release it. Unless it's like, what if it sucks? Like, what if it's like really?
Well, I'm tempering my expectations. Like, what exactly? What is the thesis? What is he trying to say here?
I don't know.
What is he uncovering about the German suplex?
Maybe it starts with Karl Gotch and the influence after. So there's a superplex attempt that Takeshita turns into a last ride. Callis gets involved, distracting him, allowing Fletcher to hit the running boot, and then Takeshita responds with raging fire. But his arm is damaged. He can't go for the cover right away, and when he does, Fletcher gets his foot on the rope, and as Fletcher gets up, kicks the bad arm, hits a sheer drop brainbuster for a big near fall, kick to the back of the head, and then we get the top turnbuckle brain buster. I was like, oh my God. I just jumped in my seat as I saw this. Yeah. And he kills Takeshita 16 minutes and 47 seconds. So they opted to get the belt off Takeshita before the G1. And I'm guessing we won't see him again till after the G1. I mean, he's in the States this weekend and then doesn't have to wrestle till the following weekend. But this kind of felt like the exit for now of Takeshita.
Yeah, and I think they're careful not to do an injury angle because they do recognize New Japan matches at least happening. So he's off to do the G1. It kind of makes sense. But as far as like a match worthy of like a title change goes, I mean this was about as outstanding as you.
These guys are pretty good.
They're pretty good. Yeah, you could point to, I would say, like, I don't know, how many would you say like are in the conversation of being the best in-ring performer in this company? I think you have like no less than 5 people you can at least like put up into that conversation, and these are the 2 of them certainly. And they delivered just like a beautiful sprint of a match. Everything was executed perfectly. Again, in these insanely hot, inhuman temperatures. So as a win, it felt like pretty clean and straightforward. Yes, you did have some callous distraction, but to me, like that felt quite minimal by like, I don't know, the standards of modern professional wrestling. But Fletcher is the type of guy that certainly warrants a pretty clean win. And it's one that you could see Takeshita getting a rematch for whenever he comes back.
So the Don Callis family is celebrating in the ring, and Mystico, who I think they taped some matches beforehand, and Mystico was involved, I believe, in some matches they did beforehand, but he was there on Wednesday. Comes out with the conglomeration. They're checking on Takeshita, and among those who are out with the Don Callis family is the returning Mark Davis, so he's got his visa issue settled. This is the first time we've seen him in some time. And Mick Foley comes out. This is his first Dynamite appearance, I think. He only did Double or Nothing.
They said it was like his first time on TBS in decades.
Yeah, I mean, Jesus, we'd have to go back to what, like 94?
Yeah.
Long time since he's been on TBS, unless I'm mistaking something. So he comes out.
Unless he was on like Wipeout or I don't know, any one of those like.
That's true. He could have
shows.
done some cameo along the way. So he comes out with the Don Callis family in the ring to interview Kyle Fletcher. And he says, this is not about me, but he puts over the match and he puts over Kyle. And then Kyle says that Takeshita was never my friend. He rode my coattails, and now I've brought this title back to the Don Callis family. And Callis cuts off Foley, telling him that he's stealing the spotlight from younger talent. And Foley says, I have something you don't. That's credibility. So when I say that's one of the finest matches I've ever seen and that Kyle Fletcher is a great wrestler, people believe me. And then he points to his shoes. He's wearing a shirt with a dog on it, and he's got shoes with dogs on them. One is Randall, who's a dog that died last year, and the other is Woofle, who is still alive, and that if Don Callis gets in his way, he threatens to use Woofle to get intimately close with Don Callis's ass.
Yes.
This is quite the message that he had. Woofle.
Yeah. I guess creative way to
work in your shoes.
Work in your shoes and to work in your dogs that this man seems to have great love for. Wearing top to bottom clothes featuring his dogs. So I don't know if this would have been like the role I pictured Foley having, after that great great buy-in interaction with MJF. This to me didn't necessarily follow up very well on it, and I also wonder if this is actually leading to anything or if they're just looking for, I don't know, like a fun moment with like Callis and Foley. I certainly feel like they could do better than to just have Foley come out be interviewer,
See, I think that's what everyone, when Foley comes out, I think there's almost the expectation that it's going to lead to something or turn into some kind of angle with him and Kyle Fletcher. And this felt like, unless this was just like step one of something.
There's no angle. Like, I mean, what's the match?
Dude, this guy's going to do the G1 next year, okay? Based on the way he's talking, okay? He's got plenty left in the tank. So, yeah, Mick Foley and Kyle Fletcher, it could happen.
Do you know what?
Could you imagine this?
Yeah.
So,
put it in maybe Death's door.
Maybe they do a Kennel from Hell with Woofle.
Oh, maybe.
Then they call out Kevin Knight, who comes down, and he says that it took Kyle long enough to win some gold again. He brings up the fact that he is owed a title shot after Death's Door, and he doesn't care if it's Kenny Omega or Maxwell Jacob Fraudman.
Yeah. Not the best week for Kevin Knight promos, but it's okay.
He is joined by Andrade, who comes out, and Shivani's just like, there's no one cooler than this guy. And the whole crowd is chanting, how you know. He says how Callis promised him a title shot. Now I promise I'm going to take one of the belts from your family. And Callis says, well, if you can beat Jake Doyle next week, you get a national title shot against Mark Davis. It's like, this is like the third tier of like the champions in the Don Callis family. He's gone from wanting Max. He's now below Knight. He's below Fletcher. He's got to go through hoops to get to Mark Davis. So he's starting from the bottom.
Have we just dropped like the MJF program at this point? Like, is that
the payoff was fuck Max and fuck Don, the shirt, because
he's not going for a championship anymore.
Well, Max isn't champion anymore, so there's not really anything for him to go toward with Max.
Yeah, and I mean, you of course Andrade, Kenny is something you could do, but it just doesn't really fit with the story of him wanting the title shot and then building that heat with MJF. Now, we are all like maybe expecting like an Andrade MJF match for that Mexico show, perhaps, but it'd probably have to be for something a bit more personal now than the title, or, I mean, it can't just end with Davis, right? The campaign to like dismantle or to like weaken Don Callis has to go a bit further than
Davis Andrade at Arena Mexico
beating Mark Davis, I feel.
So does this mean Kevin Knight has now lost his title shot? because that was the agreement with Max, right?
So
Unless Kenny honors it.
Yeah, well, Kevin Knight did state here, like, no matter who wins, I'm going to be next in line. He kind of threw out an informal challenge, and I guess on the show, if you throw out an informal challenge, you're likely to like get a title shot anyway.
Yeah. You just get your name out there in advance.
But he never really built that much tension with Max, right? Like, it was Andrade and MJF that really had everything going for it. So curious to see how that plays out.
So then the Don Callis family chase Andrade to the back, and they go, and Darby appears, and he's got the dreaded backpack that they're worried has a bomb inside of it. And Brian Cage grabs his skateboard to use on Darby, and there's an explosion.
They dropped the backpack because, I mean, Knight warned him, hey, don't use that. There's an explosive in it. So he grabs the skateboard instead, and turns out that had the explosion in it as well.
Now, this thing exploded, and when the dust cleared, this skateboard was unharmed. So this was a hell of a board that they had that withstood this explosion. Tough. Yeah, apparently. This was probably a Tony Hawk. And Andrade is shown holding a detonator.
Yeah, and he asked, how you know?
Yeah, so much like Jim Cornette was accused of a terroristic threat, this was a terroristic act that we saw happen backstage here. Like, this was full on, like... this was a felony. I thought this was just totally ridiculous.
The explosions.
Yeah, it just
for Darby Allin. I feel like it's within the bounds of like what I think is normal for him. You know.
I thought it was too goofy for Darby myself. I don't know.
They had the explosion in the cage match.
I understand that. I just, from a visual standpoint, I thought this was just silly. But that was me. I don't like fun.
So, Darby Allin versus Kevin Knight, still very much a thing. Then we've got Andrade.
How many matches does Kevin Knight have lined up for himself?
Well, Speedball probably coming up.
Although Speedball apparently isn't interested in that program. As we'll hear from later.
Not for now. Yeah, I feel like that would be Montreal.
Then he better get the ball rolling on that. That's only in a few weeks.
It
was so weird tonight. We can just skip to this. Renee asks him, I'm sure you want to talk about Kevin Knight. And his response was, I don't want to talk about Kevin Knight right now. I want to face Mark Davis next week. On Collision, which is amazing because Andrade has to go through Jake Doyle to get to Mark Davis. Speedball's just calling his shot, and he gets Mark Davis for the title on Saturday. How does this work?
Well, clearly, Andrade should have just like cut a promo backstage saying, I want to challenge Mark Davis. So you wouldn't bring up you wouldn't bring up Knight unless they were planning on headed that direction. So
I hope they do something because, dude, Speedball has fallen off a cliff since they broke up that team.
Yeah, well, he's been working on his fashion is what he's been doing. We saw
he's got a ways to go, dude.
That lovely trench coat, and look at this beautiful floral print shirt. Yeah. You know, so
who's he getting tips from, Mick?
This is way better than what Mick had, but I mean, it works. If you look confident, then you can look good in anything. But I mean, he's got to have something big for Montreal, and I see Knight being that immediate direction.
Jon Moxley and Will Ospreay against the workhorsemen of JD Drake and Anthony Henry. I enjoy these tag matches with Moxley and Ospreay. 8.5 minutes. They had the workhorsemen gain the advantage on Ospreay. That went through the picture-in-picture. And when they come back, there's a Rana delivered to Henry and a handspring corkscrew as he tags in Moxley. Moxley rolls to the floor to get slapped by Marina to fire him up for a showdown with JD Drake, hitting a bunch of lariats, and then Ospreay's in, does the float over, and we get a simultaneous Styles Clash piledriver spot from Ospreay and Moxley, followed by a paradigm shift and Will's hidden blade to pin Drake in 8 minutes, 32 seconds.
These are really fun exhibition matches, you know, and I thought like JD Drake and Anthony Henry were like a great pair of stylistic opponents for the both of them, with Drake especially like allowing for like an impressive showcase of Ospreay's strength with that Styles Clash. Like you don't need, like, you know who's going to win, but man, is it fun to just like watch these two as a pair. while everything's still really good between the two of them, they're just like gelling beautifully, as this like very dominant tag team. So
This is going to be great footage for that eventual countdown show.
absolutely, of course. You just like wonder how long this run is going to be because, like, I mean, they win this much, they look this dominant, they're gonna have to go for the tag team titles soon, wouldn't you say? But Ospreay has like the world title match and probably world title win coming up. So at what point would they fit a tag team run in if it gets that far?
Will does 2 matches a night with both belts.
That's not unprecedented,
No,
Yeah,
you could
with
do
MJF and Cole.
There was a highlight video of Hikaru Shida winning the TBS title last week, and she is now the face of TBS. She calls herself the ace of TBS, and TBS now stands for the best is Shida. TBS.
Acronyms are weird. Yeah. Good stuff. I think she's really honed in on a character, and I hope she takes this far.
The women's casino gauntlet followed. Mercedes Moné comes out first, and she is placed on this lifeguard chair.
Mm-hmm.
They did these long shots, and she's just off into the distance sitting on this big chair for the next 20 minutes. And she just seemed like she's so far away. It was so long, and she's in every background shot.
Well, she's kind of like Shao Kahn in Mortal Kombat.
It was just, I don't know. They probably thought this was a great idea.
I didn't think it was that so bad. It just kept you a constant reminder in in telling you who was looming in the distance, like literally.
Thekla came out and she was on commentary and was drinking, which maybe provided more.
Thekla I thought was really entertaining on commentary. I mean, surprise,
she had some lines here. Okay,
she's got this whole thing. Yeah. Please go on.
Oh, she said that last time I went to a casino, I won $10K and I ended up with a stripper on my lap. She compared Mina Shirakawa to a blow-up doll and wishes they were closer friends and what she would do. She basically insinuated she would motorboat her.
Yeah, pretty much. Yep. Mm-hmm. And at this point, it's like I feel like we're learning so much more about Thekla as a character than just her coming in as some sort of human spider. Like now we know she loves strip clubs and who knows what else. But it's like it's a really entertaining I guess fully fleshed out sort of like direction now that we've got for her. She also provided like pretty good background like for the Stardom talent, and yeah, like just I don't know, felt like a great. Had a great appearance, in my opinion, on commentary.
Strongest spider in wrestling since Nate Webb.
Sure, yeah, without the weedest, no.
Athena and Maya World begin, and they just went back and forth for a couple of minutes, and boom, Sky Blue comes in, and she's got a kendo stick. So we had the Sisters of Sin involved in this match where they brought weapons in, and Athena does this power slam to Sky Blue onto the steps that look brutal. Mina Shirakawa is in 4th. Then Rena, the 19-year-old from Stardom, she is in 5th, and Thekla explained her background with Rena when they were together in a group. Julia Hart is 6th, and she brings in a trash can lid. And at this time, Blue and Hart start taking out security. They attack Justin Roberts to take his chair. And there was just so much weapon shots, and it's not like the crowd was all that heated for this. Mm-hmm. So as this was hitting its lull, they asked Thekla about like the match, and her response is, "Well, it's a shit show, that's for sure."
Okay. This was all during the commercial break too.
I think it was during the commercial break. Thunder Rosa is out 7th. She got hit with an O-face, but Mina broke up the cover. Then there was an O-face to Mina, and everyone jumps in to stop the cover. And then 8th is the returning Willow Nightingale. And this awoke the crowd because I thought this was a pretty substandard casino gauntlet. But Willow comes out, huge reaction. And Thekla asks, I wonder if she was even really injured. And Willow basically just came in, babe with the powerbomb to Julia Hart, and she wins in 18 minutes and 24 seconds. Thekla comes in to spear Willow. And then the Divine Dominion come out. They slam the Sisters of Sin on the ramp. And Thekla sets up for a belt shot, which is stopped by Mercedes, who takes out Thekla, and then she nails Willow with a title. And they have established that Mercedes has begun a business relationship with Divine Dominion. So we will get Mercedes and Thekla in Montreal, Willow and Thekla in Montreal, and the winner facing Mercedes at All In London, which I'm thinking is going to be Willow and Mercedes now at the end of this whole thing.
Seems like our most likely option, in terms of just star power, and kind of gets away from like the double heel aspect to. Although, like, I can certainly see some disappointed people because Thekla has been so strong. You probably would have a lot of people who want to see her in that spot. And you never really write off the idea of like her inclusion in some form, whether it be a 3-way or just, I don't know, like somehow getting involved. But the bigger match, maybe if we're talking one-on-one, is going to be Willow versus Monet in what seems to be poised as Willow's crowning moment,
which is kind of weird,
actually,
right? Because she'll be going in as champion.
You're right. Actually, I think it'd be more likely Mercedes' crowning moment, right? Because Mercedes hasn't won the title yet, and
Willow is the one that ended her reign on the New Year's Eve show.
Yeah. Or Thekla could retain, man, and they could go Thekla Mercedes. Somehow, I mean, it's still somewhat up in the air, but I mean, all signs point towards like Willow entering the main event or the women's championship match at Wembley, and having Divine Dominion by Mercedes, I think is a great way to like kind of propel Divine Dominion into your sort of main programs involving the AEW Championship.
I thought coming out of this, like Julia and Sky Blue getting the title shot, whether it be on TV or the pay-per-view, is probably going to be the next women's tag title program.
Sure. But like I would suggest like they've been kind of sequestered off into like, entertaining, but like programs that don't receive that much storyline focus on AEW Dynamite. And this would bring them into, like a Mercedes Moné program. So, yeah.
Good ending with the Willow surprise, but I thought overall it was a pretty disappointing match overall, and it went 18 and a half minutes. Right after Willow's return, they did put up a video that Willow is going to Tokyo Joshi Pro next week to face Mizuki. So that will be happening at Korakuen Hall on July 18th, which is also the day that the G1 starts in Japan as well.
I was also a little disappointed in like the Maya World Athena interactions. I don't think they did enough to really build up that program.
It didn't feel like Maya World came off of the pay-per-view and there's this whole run as though she was like propelled. It almost felt like, okay, that was her turn and now we're moving on from that. It didn't have like a big feel to it at the start of the match, and you're right, they didn't really put much emphasis on it.
I mean, they could get there, certainly, especially like this could just be, I don't want to say just, but this could be largely taking place on Ring of Honor, like if you're trying to build up to that title change. So maybe that's where they'll get more of that focus.
There was a video announcing Jack Perry has re-signed with AEW, stating that AEW is where the future will be decided. Like of everything, like the next president, the future of AI, it's all going to be done here in AEW. Throwing out financials, let's say that isn't like the deciding factor. Good move for Jack Perry staying in AEW.
I think so. I think if he enters WWE, it's like, it's not like he's such a big star that I think they would put him onto the main roster. Like, I think they'd still want to develop him a little bit in NXT. And that means...
Oh, man. They'd make him Dylan Perry.
They'd give him...
Or
like,
Jack McKay. That's what they would be. The father's name. Jack McKay.
Well, he could rejoin his House of Torture, stablemate.
Yeah. Maybe.
Noraku. But I don't think, like, I mean, entering NXT like in his current state, I think would only result in like another Ricky Saints. I think that's a big step back. Whereas in AEW, he still always has a chance of being recognized as somebody near the top. He is still considered one of the pillars, and really the next in line of the four pillars to probably get a world title. But it's a far step, like you got MJF at the very top, Darby beneath him. And then I do think it's a very far step to like your sort of like Jack Perry's and way beneath that Sammy Guevara, unfortunately, at this point. So he's got some ground to make, but Tony will always like give him the chances, right? And so this little video, like him talking about like, his biggest fear is not living up to the potential and having his sights set on the world championship. And you had Luchasaurus also talk about like an interaction with Luke Perry, and telling Luke Perry that he will like protect his son because his son looked up to him. Does the timing work out for that? I guess I don't think he'd make
like
that
Luke
up.
Perry went to some of his PWG shows. I'm sure that's legit. Yeah.
Okay. So, I mean, this seems to just like really restate the focus on Jack Perry, and almost like seems like the beginning of what could be an actual world title campaign, but he's got a lot of ground to cover because look who is in the mix in the world title picture right now.
Yeah. The size is not going to be the detriment in AEW, and I think that would be a big obstacle for him in WWE. It's not like he's the most dynamic promo. Like, I think this is probably the better spot for him as well. But, if I'm assessing like your top 10 guys, I don't think Jack Perry is there. But he's also young, and he's someone that, he's he could mature and get to that level. But you're right. And not everybody is going to be your championship level guy, but I think people have put those expectations on Jack Perry.
Does it lead you to think that Anna Jay would be more or less likely to stay around as well?
I never go to that conclusion that just because your partner is in a company that's going to be the ultimate decision-making process for you. I actually think like Anna Jay would do very well going to WWE.
Agreed. Maybe not for the health of their relationship, but for the health of her career, I think she'd do better in like WWE than.
It's also not the old schedule where you're just not going to see somebody for it's not ideal, but it's also it's not like you're going to be weeks apart or like just catching each other in passing. It's very manageable in comparison to years past. I would not sway my decision just based on that, for instance. Renee then spoke. This was the Speedball interview, so he doesn't want to talk about Kevin Knight. Not until we get closer to Montreal. MJF Kenny Omega closes the show, and we got a big entrance for Kenny Omega where Justin Roberts introduced him, the first AEW Grand Slam champion, 95 wins in AEW, not including his victory against diverticulitis. Does that sound like an NXT name?
Diverticulitis?
Yeah.
Yeah.
MJF is introduced, the man who kicked out of the one-winged angel like it was nothing. And man, if the crowd was down for some like middle portions of this, my God, did they ramp up for this match because they were super heated for this match. And Excalibur states they will stay with this as long as it goes, even if it lasts an hour. And it was 10:53 p.m. And while I didn't think they would do this, I think that this company is the kind of thing that they will think of one day is doing this. They do a 3-hour Dynamite, but they don't advertise it as a 3-hour Dynamite. They don't promote it as a 3-hour Dynamite. They don't worry about people's DVRs being all fucked up. They just do it to fuck with you.
I mean, I don't know if like TBS would allow that, or like if just the schedule still do exist, but if they ever become
or you
like
change it and you just say, oh, it was a mistake on TBS's end. They put 3 hours in, but we're only going 2.
Like if they ever become an HBO Max exclusive property, like
yeah, you're right. Then they could. I think they totally play with that.
Raw could do that.
They could, but they don't.
Yeah.
Oh no. We start with Kenny attempting a one-winged angel immediately, and a head scissors prevents it as they fly over the top and head into the crowd where they brawled far into this crowd. This crowd went deep, dude. And MJF tosses them into a bunch of chairs. Eventually they make it back, and MJF uses Bryce as a shield to avoid a V-trigger. And so they go by the entranceway, and Kenny Omega does a moonsault off this lifeguard chair.
Yeah, beautiful.
Hasselhoff never did that. And it's very heated. There's chants back and forth. Like, they're really into this and going back and forth for both guys. It wasn't just Kenny. Max hit the dreaded package pile driver, and then he goes for a pile driver off the edge of the apron to go onto the desk. Omega blocks, and a flying boot sends Max flying off the apron through the desk as Excalibur announced, we are going to our final commercial break, which could have meant we were going to come back for like 45 minutes of uninterrupted action.
Yeah, that's what it would have meant. Mm-hmm.
And if you were watching during this commercial break, during the table spot, this is when Omega. Now, in one sense, I believed like, yeah, these guys are exhausted, and he's just dousing his eyes with water. And they're like, oh, he's getting sand out of his eyes. I was like, okay, he might legit have sand in his eyes. But moments later, he goes for the one-winged angel on the edge, and MJF gouges the eyes. I was like, if that was thought out, that was a brilliant spot to focus on the eyes, because he went basically like they were showing so much, like they were shooting him, like trying to flush his eyes out with the water.
Yeah. Well, it's the type of thing that like I feel like would have been confirmed if the announcers picked up on it, and the announcers didn't pick up on like any sort of like eye injury, story, right? So don't know what exactly was happening here. It could have just been very clever cover for like a water break, because
which they probably needed. Like this, these two looked like exhausted here at this point. And we're like 18 minutes in, and they're going a hard 18 minutes as well at this point in time, and they've got this whole final stretch to get through. So Kenny tries the "you can't escape" off the barricade, landing on the knees, which gives Excalibur his opening. That's where he had 25 centimeters of his intestine removed. Hit him right in the diverticulitis. And MJF picks up Kenny. MJF, by the way, he's selling the knee, which is still all wrapped up. He hits a tombstone to Kenny onto a chair while clutching his knee after landing it. MJF's knee gives out inside of the ring, and another one-winged angel is attempted, and Max fights it off with punches, and instead Kenny goes to Croyt's Wrath and hits another V-trigger from behind. He lifts up Max onto the turnbuckle for another one-winged angel, and Max busts out a Poison Rana. And this thing looked awesome. He follows with a Heat Seeker, and when Kenny kicked out, this place exploded. They were so hot for this, and at that near fall, this crowd was all in. They're chanting for Kenny. It was so loud. Max brings the belt into the ring, and Bryce yanks it away, and that allows Max to pull out the ring. When Ospreay runs down and grabs the ring, and Omega gets the belt, but we're back, and it's Cena and Cody. And Cody can't do it. And Kenny can't do the belt shot. He's like, no, I can't do it. And in his hesitation, Max low blows him and hits him with the belt. Kenny kicks out at 1, and you just got this thunderous response as Kenny delivers those awesome-looking strikes, hits 3 consecutive V-triggers, and a one-winged angel is finally hit, and this time Max does not kick out. 24 minutes and 6 seconds as Kenny wins the title. Taz is pissed. Not only are these ropes orange, but Will removed the Dynamite diamond ring, and he is not happy about this. And the closing shot is the graphic for All In London, Omega versus Ospreay, that Excalibur states is the main event as it stands now.
Right.
But hell of a match that these two had to cap off this show, and probably a personal feat of endurance for these two on top of it.
Yeah, very much so. Again, like the heat in this one, like in a literal sense, is what I will remember most about this particular match, because you really saw it. You saw the exhaustion on certainly Kenny's face, and the constant need for water, like in the aftermath of this match. That was the first thing he was asking for, not the championship belt. He wanted a bottle of water. It made this win feel that much more like hard-earned and satisfying, knowing like how actually hard this whole performance might have been for the both of them. But again, especially Kenny, it really does, I think, like help with the current Kenny Omega storyline of a guy maybe struggling, to live up to the expectations of what he used to be as an in-ring performer. Like the heat, I thought, really added to all of that. And he continues to deliver exactly the type of Kenny Omega performance that I think you'd want in these big matches. And this was one of those big Kenny Omega matches where You got spectacle in the form of like beautiful looking dives, like that one off the lifeguard chair. You had, I would say a lot of creativity involved as well with like, the spot at the table, the spot on the jumping tombstone on the chair. And I thought you had a really wonderful like run up to the finish with that kick out at one, all the way to all the stuff with Osprey. So it was a big Kenny Omega level match. I thought MJF was outstanding in the build up to this one, as he has been pretty much all year, and just incredible as the sort of antagonist for Kenny Omega. So like a really really excellent match that you probably would have expected to have taken place on Redemption, perhaps if they weren't so maybe in a rush to announce this main event.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly brings up the question of what you like. Do you even do a Kenny title defense on the pay-per-view? You would think so. Like there has to be a strong reason for doing this pay-per-view in a couple of weeks, and it's not like they set anything up here to necessarily run this one back. I don't know if you would run this one back so quick. Like a Kenny Andrade, Kenny Kevin Knight. I don't know if that really feels like a pay-per-view main event at this stage.
Hard to feel anything being that threatening when I think like Omega versus Osprey, it seems so concrete, by now.
Yeah, like you do not have, and we also, despite, we had that one line last week from Kenny about that he's, whatever it was, about like having backup this week in case, and you did have Osprey run out, but like no indication of like Hangman, no involvement in that direction that some were thinking there was the potential you could see his return on this show, but none of that. So yeah, it remains to be seen what they opt to do for Montreal with Kenny, because you're in a spot where like you really just want this time to promote this Wembley show. I don't think you want to spend a couple of weeks teasing that it might not happen by getting through this pay-per-view, but you got to see what they have planned for July 26th.
It's got to be something big involving Kenny, and if not for a world title change, then some level of spectacle, whether it be like, I don't know, like one of these cage matches, or they can't really just go to that again,
No.
But something interesting enough, and you should be. I think a rematch with Max might still be the best option, because Max is at least like in the conversation of being in the title mix, right? They're like they've established like a good amount of tension between MJF and Osprey, so that you could at least maybe somewhat buy his being involved somehow. Like maybe
is there something strong enough that you could do? Max wants the rematch, and Kenny's response is, well, I just beat you. Now I want something from you. And if I beat you, you revoke Hangman's stipulation.
Ooh, I like that a lot. Or maybe he puts up his hair.
That too. Yeah. The hair.
Okay, it's interesting. Yeah, you have different things to. Yeah, as long as you maybe deliver some sort of like narrative consequence, I maybe they can still do it.
And that could segue, like you could have Kenny beat MJF. It's a valuable stipulation that at least sets that up, and that's the way you could probably get to Hangman and MJF for Wembley if that was an option. Like Hangman is granted his shot, but first he has unsettled business with MJF, and that's a strong match for Wembley. That's one idea. Because you have to imagine Hangman is back in time for London, and that would
for sure
be the opponent that makes the most sense. It's just how you get there. But yeah, really, really strong edition of Dynamite. I really love that main event. I thought it was really great. And you had Takeshita Fletcher on top of that, which was also a really impressive match as well. I would say those two especially stood out. Ciampa and Jericho had a nice match for its purpose as well. The tag match was quick but effective. I was a bit disappointed with the Casino Gauntlet, but I did like the Willow return, and the crowd got really into that as well. So you got something meaningful at the end of that Casino Gauntlet.
A lot of pieces seem to be set in place, not just for Redemption, but for Wembley through this episode. Like it's the return of Willow headed towards a very likely world title match at Wembley. You have Kenny Omega and Ospreay being confirmed. You have, I guess at this point, maybe Fletcher, like probably holding on to the championship all the way to Wembley. And you have to ask maybe what that direction may be. G1 over by then?
Yes. Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm
okay.
pretty sure the G1 ends the 16th, and then Wembley's the 30th. So
Okay.
I would think for sure Takeshita's on that card, and
Sure.
whether it's a
Yeah.
rematch or I'm sure
Three-way?
he would be on that. Maybe he gets into like he's match number 14.
Perhaps, yeah. You have the Mercedes Moné Divine Dominion pairing that seems perfectly set up for her heel status, headed towards that title match at Wembley as well.
Do you think, the last question, do you think now that you have Omega and Ospreay pretty much set, do you think you've got 8 weeks? Is this a type of match that you think it will spur like some people like to travel to this show? Is this the type of main event that you could see people like this turns the corner if they were on the fence about maybe going to this show? Because this feels like a match that they're really trying to, like, I think the subtle promotion of this is this might be the last time you see this match, and it's going to be on a major stage, and they want to create this all-time classic. I'm just curious if this is going to be essentially, is this a match that you could see moving tickets, or are they just going to move at the pace they're going to that we've been seeing?
So the answer to that is, if this match doesn't, I don't know what other match they could put out there to have that effect. It is the biggest match that they can make. I feel of anybody that they have, and they're playing that card.
Goldberg's retirement.
Well, you can heighten it certainly. Like okay.
Last year he was retired against All In. This year he retires at
actually
All In.
retire at All In. I certainly think it's the best hand you can play if you're looking to make a matchup. It's the biggest match you can make for a pay-per-view event. But they can heighten it through the use of stipulation, through the use of, I don't know, whatever else. I do think there's like the very real sort of like exclusivity of this being potentially like the last Wembley show for a while. Like, I don't know if they would come back even in 2 years, like considering these numbers. So if you want to see Kenny Omega versus Will Ospreay inside Wembley Stadium, inside an arena this big, if you want to see Will Ospreay perform in Wembley Stadium, this could be your only chance.
Like in almost any other
In the main
venue,
event, I should
like we'd be looking at like 28,000 people, and I don't think you'd be, it's like it's like on its surface, like that's a very good number, but you're in a venue where it's just like, we're talking about like a third full.
Well,
here.
100 is impressive in a room of like fit for 100, but 100 in I don't know, a room fit for 1,000 is not. Yeah, it's all relative.
So there you go, everyone. That wraps up Beach Break for the week. They didn't announce anything for next week, did they?
I guess this is a pretty big one.
Yeah.
No, they didn't. Yeah.
Collision, we've got Mark Davis and Speedball, and I don't think they announced anything beyond that. So this is not one where they had a whole lot to send you to next week. But yeah, we are getting closer to the Redemption pay-per-view. How many weeks do we have? We have they have 2 more Dynamites, and then they're into the pay-per-view.
How well are they? Have they sold Redemption?
It's it's just over 5,000, 5,100.
Because I don't know if tonight's show would have. I don't know if it would have helped or hurt Redemption.
I mean, if you're in Montreal and you're watching this, like at this point, this kind of feels like a lame duck show. You don't have any matches announced beyond Thekla and Mercedes, and
they will fix this. Okay, so it's Kenny Omega with the championship. They can make something big. Like it's Kenny Omega coming in with the title. It's under threat somehow. They can make it feel important.
You're gonna get like again. They're not adding this out of nowhere without like there was a specific reason. We just don't know what that specific reason is of why this show is so important that you needed to do a show on pay-per-view 4 weeks before All In. They chose to do this, and they chose to do the title match tonight.
Aren't they at this point? Like, don't they have to have a pay-per-view a month for my AEW? Because that's the subscription plan. You pay a monthly fee, you get one AEW pay-per-view.
Oh, so you're saying like for subscribers, they would expect a pay-per-view per month. Yeah, no. But they're as of now, like they don't. I know my AEW wasn't around at the beginning of the year, but it's like January and February. I guess that'll be interesting if they add it because they don't run pay-per-views in January and February. You think they'll expand all the way to 12 a month, a year?
Mm-hmm.
Well, that might be the case. So there you go, everybody. We are going to continue for Café members over at forum.postwrestling.com. We have your feedback to go through. But again, do get your picks in for the G1 contest. You've got till Friday night to do so. Again, it's free to enter. postwrestling.com/G1. Log in, make your picks in the matches, and then follow along with all of our G1 podcasts that begin this weekend. And we hope you're along for the ride. Catch the double shot. Really great breakdown of the first 2 episodes of Dark Side of the Ring Season 7, and those will be coming weekly.
Yep, and again, the first half of that episode covering episode 1 of Dark Side of the Ring will be out on the free feed tomorrow afternoon.
Perfect. All right, goodbye to everyone on YouTube.